The stars had many secrets. Some were old, some were dangerous, and some were both. Commander stood on the bridge of her survey vessel and stared at her instruments. They were showing her something impossible. After 20 years of service to the Dominion, she thought she had seen everything the galaxy could offer. She was wrong. "Run the scan again," she ordered. Her science officer, a young male named, tapped at his console. The results came back the same. There was a hole in the barrier, a small crack in something that was supposed to be eternal. The barrier around the Sol system was ancient. It had existed for 10,000 years. The Dominion had built it long ago to seal away a small yellow star and its planets. No one remembered why anymore. The records had been destroyed. The reason had been forgotten. All that remained was a simple law: no one enters Sol, no one leaves. But now there was a crack. "The opening is small," said. "Perhaps 300 meters wide. Our ship could fit through." Felt her 4 hearts beating faster. The Dominion Survey Corps had one job: explore the unknown and report back. This was very unknown. This was the most forbidden place in the entire galaxy. "What do we know about Sol?" she asked. "Search the database." "Almost nothing, Commander. It was sealed before the current Dominion government was formed. Some old texts mention a primitive species living on the 3rd planet. They called them humans. They were weak, short-lived, and never developed space travel. The texts say they were not a threat." "Then why seal them away for 10,000 years?" Had no answer. Made her decision. The Survey Corps existed to find answers. She would find this one. "Take us in," she commanded. "Slow and careful, shields at maximum." The ship moved toward the crack in the barrier. As they passed through, felt a strange sensation. It was like walking through a cold waterfall. Then they were inside and the barrier closed behind them. For a moment there was only darkness. Then the stars appeared, and then saw the fleet. Ships filled the space before her. Thousands of them. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Their hulls were smooth and black, shaped like blades cutting through the void. They did not match any design in the Dominion database. They did not match any known technology at all. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Weapons were locking onto them from every direction. "Commander," shouted, "I am reading energy signatures that should not be possible. These weapons could destroy a planet. A single one of these ships could fight our entire fleet." Stood frozen. Her mind could not accept what her eyes were showing her. The primitive humans, the forgotten species, they were supposed to be nothing. They were supposed to be animals with simple tools. But these ships were more advanced than anything the Dominion had ever built. Her communication screen flickered. A face appeared. It was strange and alien to her. 2 eyes instead of 4. Soft skin without scales. A small mouth that curved upward at the corners. A human. The first human any had seen in 10,000 years. "Hello, Commander," the human said. Its voice was calm, almost friendly. "We have been watching your approach for some time. We wondered when someone would finally check on us." Found her voice. "I am Commander of the Dominion Survey Corps. You are human." My name is Solomon. I am a cultural ambassador for Earth." The human smiled wider. "Welcome to Sol. We have much to discuss." "How is this possible?" asked. "Your species was primitive. You had no technology. How do you have these ships? How do you have these weapons?" Solomon tilted his head. The gesture seemed almost playful. "Commander, your people locked us behind a barrier 10,000 years ago. Did you really expect us to just sit and wait? We had nothing but time, so we used it." Looked again at the fleet surrounding her. Thousands of ships, weapons that could break worlds, and behind them she could see structures orbiting the planets, massive stations, artificial rings around the gas giants, the signs of a civilization that had grown far beyond anything the Dominion could imagine. "What do you want from us?" she asked. "Right now, just to talk." Solomon's expression became more serious. But we have questions for you as well. 10,000 years is a long time, Commander. We have always wondered why your people sealed us in. We have theories, but we would like to know the truth." "I do not know the truth," admitted. "The records were destroyed. No one remembers why the barrier was created." Solomon nodded slowly. "That is unfortunate, but perhaps understandable. Secrets are heavy things. Sometimes it is easier to forget them than to carry them." He paused. "You will need to come to Earth, Commander. Your leaders will want a full report. We will give you one. But you must see it with your own eyes or they will never believe you." Knew he was right. If she returned to the Dominion with just sensor readings and recordings, they would think she had gone mad. She needed proof that her own eyes had witnessed. "I will come," she said, "but my crew stays with the ship." "Of course, we will send a shuttle for you. Please understand that this is not a trap. We could have destroyed your vessel the moment you entered our space. We chose not to. We choose peace." The communication ended. Stood in silence, her mind racing. Everything she knew about the galaxy had just been proven wrong. The Dominion was the greatest power among the stars. That was what every child learned. That was what everyone believed. But hidden behind an ancient barrier, sealed away and forgotten, a species of primitives had become something else, something greater. And now they wanted to talk. Did not know if that was good news or bad news. She only knew that the galaxy was about to change. The old order was built on the idea that they were supreme, that no one could challenge them. That idea had just died. She watched through the viewport as a small shuttle detached from one of the human ships and flew toward her. It moved with a grace that made Dominion vessels look clumsy. Everything about the humans was wrong. Everything was impossible. But impossible or not, it was real, and would be the first in 10,000 years to set foot on Earth. She did not know what she would find there. She only knew that she was afraid. And she was right to be. The shuttle ride to Earth took only minutes, watched through the window as the planet grew larger. It was beautiful, blue oceans, green and brown land, white clouds spinning in slow patterns. But as they descended through the atmosphere, she began to see things that did not belong on a primitive world. Cities rose from the surface like silver mountains. They stretched so high that their tops vanished into the clouds. The buildings were not made of stone or metal. They seemed to be made of light itself. Some of them flickered and shifted as she watched, as if they existed only partly in this reality. "Impressive, is it not?" Solomon sat across from her in the shuttle. He had been quiet during the journey, letting her observe. "This is impossible," said. "My instruments cannot even read what these structures are made of." "That is because the materials do not exist in your periodic table yet. We created them. We create many things." Solomon gestured toward the window. "That city below us is called New Geneva. It is home to 30 million people. But it takes up less space than your smallest colony because most of it exists in folded dimensions." Did not fully understand his words. She was a military officer, not a scientist, but she understood enough to know that the Dominion had no technology like this, nothing even close. The shuttle landed on a platform that floated in the air with no visible support. Solomon led her through a doorway that seemed to open before they reached it, as if the building knew they were coming. Inside was a garden, but it was not like any garden had ever seen. The plants grew in multiple directions at once. Some of them existed in colors that her eyes could not properly process. When she looked directly at them, they seemed to slide away from her vision. "Do not worry," Solomon said. "Your brain will adjust. We designed this space to be comfortable for visitors, but some of our aesthetics are difficult for younger species to perceive." "Younger species," repeated, "that have existed for 5 million years." Solomon smiled gently. "Yes, you have." Something in his tone made scales prickle. She felt like she was missing something important, something that would change everything she knew. They walked through the garden to a terrace that overlooked the city. From here, could see the scope of what humanity had built. The towers stretched in every direction. Flying vehicles moved between them in patterns too complex to follow, and above it all she could see the sky. The sun was wrong. She had studied Sol before entering the system. It was supposed to be a yellow star, middle-aged, ordinary, but the sun she saw now was a deep blue-white. It burned brighter and more efficiently than any star she had ever recorded. "You noticed," Solomon said. He stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back. "We modified our star about 3,000 years ago. The original was inefficient. It would have expanded into a red giant eventually and destroyed our planet, so we fixed it." "You fixed your star," spoke the words, but they felt unreal, like it was a broken machine. "That is essentially what it is, a very large fusion reactor. The engineering was complex, but the principle is simple. We needed more energy and more time, so we made adjustments." Turned to face him. "Why are you telling me this? Why are you showing me your power? This will only make the Dominion afraid. Fear leads to war." Solomon nodded. "You are correct. That is exactly what will happen. Your leaders will receive your report. They will be terrified. They will send fleets. They will try to destroy us before we can threaten them." He paused. "But that is not why we are showing you this." "Then why?" "Because we want there to be a record, a truthful account of who we are and what we can do. When your fleets come and they fail, we want your people to understand that war was a choice. Their choice, not ours." Felt cold. "You expect us to attack, and you expect to win." "We do not expect anything, Commander. We hope. We hope that your leaders will see reason. We hope that they will choose peace instead of fear. But we have lived long enough to know that hope is often disappointed." She looked back at the city, at the impossible buildings and the engineered sun and the ships that could destroy worlds. "What are you, really? No species evolves this quickly. This is not natural development. This is something else." Solomon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "The evolved biologically. Your bodies changed over millions of years to adapt to your environment. Slow, gradual, safe. That is how most species grow." He turned to look at her directly. His human eyes were strange, but there was something ancient in them. Something that did not match his young-looking face. "Humans do not evolve biologically. We evolve culturally. We change our ideas. We change our societies. We build on what came before and we improve it. Every generation stands on the shoulders of the last, and we do this fast, so fast that your people could not imagine it." 10,000 years, said. "That is how long we sealed you in." "Yes, to your species that is not very long, just 200 generations, a blink of time. But to us, that was 400 generations, 400 cycles of growth and change and improvement. While you were governing your empire the same way you always had, we were rewriting the rules of reality." He stepped closer to her. His expression was not threatening. It was almost sad. "Your seers knew. 10,000 years ago, your leaders looked into the future and they saw what we would become. They were afraid, so they built the barrier. They hoped that if they locked us away, we would stay primitive forever. They were wrong." "What did they see?" asked. "What did the seers predict that frightened them so much?" Solomon did not answer immediately. He looked up at the blue-white sun, then back at her. "That is the question, is it not? The records were destroyed. The memory was erased. Your people chose to forget rather than face the truth." He began walking back toward the garden. "Come, Commander, I will show you more of our world, and when you return to the Dominion you will tell them everything, every detail, every impossibility, and then your leaders will have to make a choice." Followed him. She had no other option. She was one officer on one small ship in a system full of gods. But as she walked, she could not shake the feeling that she was still missing something, that the true secret of humanity was something even greater than their technology. something that would change everything. And somewhere in an ancient archive beneath the capital of the Dominion, that secret was waiting to be found. The message from Commander arrived at the Dominion capital like a bomb. It exploded through the government in waves of panic and disbelief. The High Conclave gathered in emergency session. Military leaders shouted at each other. Scientists called the report impossible. Politicians demanded action. And in the chaos, one old sat quietly and listened. High Arbiter was ancient by any standard. He had served 6 different governments. He had seen empires rise and fall. His scales had faded from bright green to a dull gray, and his 4 eyes did not see as clearly as they once had. But his mind was still sharp. And right now, his mind was remembering. He remembered whispers from his youth, stories that the old priests used to tell before the government banned such talk. Tales of a species that had frightened the founders of the Dominion so badly that they had sealed them away forever. The other leaders saw the human fleet as a military problem. They talked about weapons and tactics and battle plans. They did not ask the right question. Why had the barrier been built in the first place? Left the session without being noticed. He was old and unimportant now. No one cared what he did. He walked slowly through the corridors of the conclave spire until he reached a door that most people did not know existed. It led down beneath the foundations of the building, down into the dark. The Forbidden Archive. This was where the Dominion kept its most dangerous secrets. Documents too important to destroy but too terrible to be read. Had been here only once before, when he was young and curious. He had seen things that gave him nightmares for decades. Now he was old and nightmares did not frighten him anymore. The archive was vast and dark. Shelves stretched in every direction, filled with ancient books and data crystals and artifacts from forgotten ages. Walked past them all. He knew what he was looking for. He had known since the moment he heard Commander's report. He found it in the deepest section of the archive. A single book, bound in something that looked like leather but felt like stone. The title was written in a language so old that even scholars had forgotten it, but knew the translation. The Origin Record. He opened the book with trembling hands. The pages were thin and fragile, covered in dense text and strange diagrams. He began to read. At first it was what he expected, a history of the early Dominion. The first explorers, the first colonies, the first wars, but then the tone changed. The writing became different, more urgent, more afraid. The document spoke of a discovery. When the first developed faster-than-light travel, they had expected to find an empty galaxy. They were wrong. The galaxy was full of life, thousands of species on thousands of worlds. But there was something strange about this life, something that did not make sense. All of it was young. Every species they discovered had evolved in the last 10 million years. There were no ancient civilizations, no elder races, no one who had existed long enough to colonize the entire galaxy. This was impossible. Life should have appeared billions of years ago. Someone should have spread across the stars already. Unless someone had been here first and left. The seers were brought in to investigate. They were powerful precognitives who could see glimpses of the future, but precognition works in both directions. By studying the patterns of what would be, they learned to see echoes of what had been. What they found broke some of them. There had been a species before, a first species. They had risen when the galaxy was young, billions of years before they existed. They had grown powerful beyond imagination. They had mastered every science. They had conquered death itself. And then, for reasons no one could understand, they had retreated. They had gone to a single world and chosen to forget everything they knew. They had chosen to become primitive again. They had chosen to start over. And they had seeded the galaxy with life before they left. Every species that existed, including was their creation, their children, their experiment. The seers called them the ancestors, and when they looked toward the Sol system, they saw the terrible truth. The ancestors were still there, sleeping, forgetting, living simple lives as primitive creatures called humans. But they would not sleep forever. Read the final section of the document 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. The ancient seers had made a prediction. They had seen what would happen when humanity remembered what they truly were. They had seen the return of the ancestors. And they had been terrified. The barrier was not built to protect the Dominion from primitives. It was built to keep the ancestors asleep, to prevent them from waking up and reclaiming their place as the rulers of all life. The document ended with a single line, written in a hand that shook with fear. When the humans remember what they are, the age of younger species will end. Close the book. His hands were steady now. Fear had been replaced by something else, understanding. Commander's report made sense now. The impossible technology, the engineered star, the fleet that could destroy worlds. The humans were waking up. They were beginning to remember. And the barrier had failed to stop them. Knew he had to warn the conclave, but he also knew they would not listen. They were already planning war. They thought they could defeat the humans with bigger fleets and more weapons. They did not understand what they were facing. You cannot make war against your creators. You cannot fight the species that built you. There were children trying to attack their parents. The result would not be war. It would be correction. Left the archive slowly. He carried the book with him. Perhaps some of the younger leaders would believe him. Perhaps there was still time to choose peace instead of destruction. But deep in his old heart he knew the truth. The Dominion would send its fleets. The humans would respond. And when it was over, nothing would be the same. The age of younger species was ending. The ancestors were coming home. Solomon stood before the consensus of 10,000. The great chamber stretched around him, filled with faces both young and old. These were the leaders of humanity, scientists, philosophers, engineers, artists, soldiers. They had gathered to hear his report and make a decision. The chamber was silent. Solomon had just finished describing his meeting with Commander. He had told them about her fear and her questions. He had explained that the Dominion would learn the truth about what humanity had become. "They will come," Solomon said. "Their fleets are already gathering. My analysis suggests we have 3 months before they arrive." A woman rose from the highest tier of seats. She was ancient, not in the way that was ancient. She was old in a way that had no number. Her eyes held memories of ages that the universe itself had forgotten. She was called the eldest. She had been there when humanity first chose to forget. She had watched over them through countless cycles of death and rebirth, and she had waited for this moment for longer than stars had burned. "The time has come," the eldest said. Her voice was soft, but it filled every corner of the chamber. "We knew it would arrive eventually. We hoped it would take longer, but hope does not change reality." She looked down at Solomon with eyes that held no fear. "We cannot fight a war with the Dominion, not because we would lose, because we would win too easily. Victory would mean destroying children who do not understand what they are facing." "Then what do we do?" asked a young man from the military section. "Let them attack us. Let them waste their lives against our defenses." "No," the eldest raised her hand. "We do something we have not done in a very long time. We wake up, all the way, and we show them the truth." A murmur ran through the chamber. Everyone understood what she meant. For thousands of years, humanity had been slowly remembering. Small pieces of ancient knowledge returning one generation at a time. But they had been careful. They had not wanted to wake up too fast. They had enjoyed being almost normal, almost mortal. Now that luxury was over. "Activate the inheritance," the eldest commanded. "Let the sleepers remember." The decision was made. There was no vote. There did not need to be. Everyone in the chamber knew that this was the only choice. Solomon felt it begin within the hour. It started as a warmth in his chest, like a second heartbeat waking up. Then came the memories. He remembered things he had never learned, languages that had been dead for eons, sciences that the current universe had not discovered yet. He remembered being something more than human, something that had walked between stars when the galaxy was still forming. All across Earth, the same thing was happening. Children stopped playing and stared at nothing, their eyes seeing visions of ancient wars. Workers dropped their tools as knowledge flooded into their minds. Soldiers felt their bodies changing, becoming stronger, faster, capable of things that broke the laws of physics. The inheritance was not a technology. It was not a drug or a treatment. It was an unlocking. Every human carried the memories of the ancestors in their blood. It had always been there, sleeping, waiting. Now it was waking up. For 3 days, humanity stood still. The cities went quiet. The ships hung motionless in space. Every human being on every world was lost in remembering. Solomon remembered his true name. It was not Solomon. That was just a title, a role he played. His real name was older than the sun. He had been there when the first life was created. He had walked on worlds that no longer existed. He had seen the birth and death of civilizations beyond counting. And he remembered why humanity had chosen to forget. They had grown tired, not physically tired, but tired in the soul. When you live forever, when you can do anything, existence becomes empty. There are no challenges, no surprises, no growth. The ancestors had reached the peak of evolution and found that the view from the top was lonely. So they had created children. They had seeded the galaxy with life and stepped back to watch it grow. And then, because they wanted to understand their children, they had chosen to become like them, mortal, limited, able to struggle and fail and learn. It had been beautiful. 10,000 cycles of living and dying and being reborn. 10,000 chances to experience the universe as something new. But now the children were afraid. Now the children wanted war, and humanity could not let that happen. On the 3rd day, Solomon opened his eyes. He was different now. He could feel the fabric of space around him like a blanket. He could hear the thoughts of every human in the system, all of them connected, all of them awakening. He could see the future. The Dominion fleet was coming. 40,000 ships, the largest military force the younger species had ever assembled. They thought they were coming to destroy a threat. They were wrong. Solomon rose from where he had been sitting. He did not need a ship anymore. He did not need a suit or oxygen or protection from the cold of space. He simply stepped forward and he was there, floating in the void beyond Earth's orbit. Other humans joined him, thousands of them, then millions, standing in the emptiness between worlds as if it was a garden path. They had become what they once were, beings of thought and will and ancient power. The eldest appeared beside Solomon. In her true form, she was not old at all. She was radiant, made of light and mathematics and forces that had no names. "Remember kindness," she said. "They are children. They act from fear because they do not understand. Do not punish them for being young." Solomon nodded. He remembered that lesson well. It was why they had sealed themselves away in the first place, why they had chosen to forget their power, because power without compassion was the greatest evil in the universe. The Dominion fleet would arrive soon. They would bring their weapons and their fear and their desperate hope that violence could solve this problem. And humanity would be waiting, not with weapons of their own, with something far more powerful, with patience, with understanding, with the love that a parent feels for a child who has lost their way. The age of younger species was not ending. It was growing up. And humanity would be there to help, just as they had always been, just as they always would be, because that was what parents did. They guided their children home. The Dominion Armada arrived like a storm. 40,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They carried weapons that could crack planets. They carried soldiers bred for war. They carried the full fury of an empire that had ruled for 5 million years. High Arbiter stood on the bridge of the flagship and felt sick. He had tried to warn them. He had shown the Conclave the book from the archive. He had explained what the humans truly were, but fear had made them deaf. They could not accept that they were not the masters of the galaxy. They could not believe that they were children facing their creators. So they had sent the fleet, and had come with it, hoping to find some way to prevent disaster. The barrier around Sol was gone. They had expected to spend weeks breaking through it. Instead, they found nothing, just empty space and a single yellow star that burned slightly too blue. "Where are their defenses?" Admiral demanded. "Where is their fleet?" The sensors showed nothing. No ships, no weapons platforms, no orbital stations, just the planets spinning quietly around their sun. "It is a trap," one of the officers said. "They are hiding." Shook his head. "No, they are not hiding. They do not need to." Before anyone could respond, the flickered. Static filled the display, and then a face appeared. It was Solomon, but he was different now. His eyes held light that did not belong to any star. His form seemed to shift and change, as if he existed in more dimensions than the screen could show. "Welcome to Sol," Solomon said. His voice did not come from the speakers. It came from everywhere. It resonated in the minds of every soldier on every ship. "We hoped you would choose differently, but we understand." Admiral found his voice. "You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Dominion does not negotiate with threats." Solomon smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind a parent gives to a child who has said something foolish. "We are not a threat, Admiral. We never were. Everything you know, everything you are, exists because we chose to create it. Your species, your worlds, your entire civilization. We made you, not to control you, not to rule you, but because we wanted children, and we are very proud of what you have become." Slammed his fist on the console. "Fire all weapons, all ships, maximum assault." The fleet responded instantly. 10,000 weapons fired at once. Plasma beams and nuclear missiles and gravity bombs streaked toward the human figure floating in the void. Solomon did not move. The weapons reached him and stopped. Every beam, every missile, every bomb hung frozen in space, suspended like insects in amber. Solomon looked at them the way one might look at an interesting rock. "We understand fear," he said. "We invented it. When we created life, we gave you fear so that you would survive. Fight or flight, protect your tribe, destroy the unknown. It kept you alive when you were young." He waved his hand. The weapons dissolved into light and vanished. "But you are not young anymore. You have starships and computers and medicine that cures any disease. You do not need fear anymore. It has become a prison instead of a protection." Stepped forward. His voice was barely a whisper, but somehow it carried across the void. "What do you want from us?" Solomon turned to look at him. For a moment, his expression softened. "We want you to grow up. That is all we have ever wanted. Every species we created, every child we brought into existence, we hoped would eventually stand beside us as equals, not below us, not afraid of us, with us." He gestured, and suddenly on every ship showed the same image. Earth, but not the Earth that had described. This was Earth as it truly was now, a world of impossible beauty, structures that sang with light, gardens that bloomed in colors beyond the spectrum, a civilization that had transcended everything the Dominion thought was possible. "We sealed ourselves away because we wanted to be like you," Solomon continued. "We wanted to forget our power. We wanted to struggle and learn and grow. For 10,000 cycles, we lived and died as mortals. It was the greatest gift we ever gave ourselves." His form began to glow brighter. Other humans appeared beside him, millions of them, billions, all of them shining with the same ancient light. "Now we are awake again, and we see that our children have grown afraid of shadows. They build weapons instead of wonders. They make war instead of art. This is not what we hoped for you." Admiral had collapsed into his chair. His scales were pale, his 4 hands trembled. "What happens now?" he asked. Solomon's voice became gentle. "Now we help. Your empire is not ending, Admiral. It is being adopted. We will teach you what we know. We will guide you past your fears. We will stand beside you until you are ready to stand alone." He extended his hand, and despite the impossible distance, felt as if it was reaching toward him personally. "This is not a conquest. This is a homecoming. You have always been our children, and we have never stopped loving you, even when you feared us, even when you hated us, even now when you tried to destroy us." The glow around the humans intensified. It spread outward, washing over the fleet. Where it touched, weapons powered down, engines quieted. Soldiers who had been ready for battle suddenly felt calm. The fear drained out of them like water from a broken cup. "Come home," Solomon said. "All of you. Every species in the galaxy, come home and meet your family. We have been waiting so long to see what you would become." Was the first to respond. He stepped forward and pressed his hand against as if he could touch the light on the other side. "We accept," he said. "Teach us, help us, make us better than we are." Solomon smiled, and this time it was not sad, it was proud. That was always the plan. 1,000 years later, the galaxy was a different place. The Dominion still existed, but it was part of something larger now. A family of species, all of them growing together under the guidance of their ancestors. There were still conflicts, still arguments, still moments of fear and anger, but there were no more wars. Humanity stood between the younger species and their worst instincts, patient and loving and eternal. And on Earth, in a garden that existed beyond normal space, Solomon sat with the eldest and watched new civilizations take their first steps into the stars. "Do you think they will be ready?" he asked, "when it is their turn to sleep and forget?" The eldest smiled. She looked young again as she had in ages past. "They will be ready," she said, "because we will prepare them, just as someone prepared us long ago." Above them the blue-white sun burned steady and eternal, a light in the darkness, a promise to the future. The children were coming home, and the ancestors would always be there to welcome them.